What if the night was supposed to be ordinary? A simple walk, a hoodie pulled over his head, a phone call with his girlfriend. Nothing more than a teenager's usual evening. But that night, everything would change in an instant. Trayvon Martin, 17 years old, never made it home. What happened in that quiet neighborhood in Sanford, Florida, became a tragedy that rocked a nation. A story that is still haunting. A story that calls for justice. It was February 26, 2012, when Trayvon Martin, a 17-year-old African-American, was walking home from a convenience store in Sanford, Florida. He had just bought a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea, carrying them in his pocket. It was a routine moment, like millions of others across the country, but it would be Trayvon's last. The neighborhood retreat at Twin Lakes was supposed to be safe, a quiet, suburban area where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. A gated community in central Florida, tucked away from the noise of the outside world. But on this night, fear and suspicion would override that sense of safety. Trayvon wasn't the only one walking in the neighborhood that night. George Zimmerman, a 28-year-old neighborhood watch volunteer, noticed Trayvon and deemed him suspicious. Zimmerman called the police, telling them he was following the suspicious young man. "These assholes, they always get away," Zimmerman muttered to the dispatcher. Little did he know, this statement would echo far beyond the walls of this quiet neighborhood. Zimmerman's pursuit of Trayvon didn't stop when the dispatcher told him to stay in his vehicle. Despite the police advising against it, Zimmerman continued following Trayvon, eventually confronting him. The details of what happened next are still clouded in uncertainty, but one thing was clear. Trayvon, frightened and confused, found himself face to face with a man who would decide his fate. A struggle ensued. Trayvon, who was unarmed, was cornered by Zimmerman. The details are contested, but it's evident that Trayvon wasn't just another suspicious person. He was a young man trying to defend himself from someone who thought he had the right to play judge, jury, and executioner. Trayvon, terrified for his life, struggled to get away. But within moments, his life would be cut short by a single gunshot fired by Zimmerman. The bullet tore through Trayvon's chest, taking the life of a young man who had nothing but Skittles and iced tea in his pockets. The very things that could have been a symbol of innocence became part of a tragic narrative. When the police arrived on the scene, they found Trayvon Martin lying lifeless on the ground, and Zimmerman standing nearby, claiming self-defense. The media quickly began to cover the story, but the initial reaction from law enforcement was astonishing. Zimmerman wasn't arrested. In fact, no charges were filed, and the case seemed like it would disappear into the shadows. But Trayvon's parents, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, weren't about to let their son's death go unnoticed. They fought for answers. They refused to accept the narrative that had already begun to form, that Trayvon was some sort of thug, that he deserved what happened to him. Trayvon's family, his friends, and an entire community rose up to demand justice. The silence was broken. Trayvon's name became a rallying cry. The case gained national attention. Protests erupted across the country, demanding accountability. The hashtag Black Lives Matter began to circulate, and what started as the story of one young man's tragic death became a symbol of the larger issue of racial profiling and the systemic violence that disproportionately affected young black men. Zimmerman's actions weren't just being questioned by Trayvon's family. They were being examined by millions of people. His motives, his history, his intentions were being scrutinized, and the world started to ask, why was Trayvon Martin dead? What could possibly justify a 17-year-old being shot in cold blood for the simple act of walking home? As the national outcry grew, the legal system couldn't ignore the pressure. On March 23, 2012, Zimmerman was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. The case was now in the hands of the justice system, and the world was watching. Zimmerman's defense team argued that he shot Trayvon in self-defense, claiming that Trayvon attacked him first. The prosecution, however, pointed out the glaring contradictions in Zimmerman's story. Trayvon was unarmed, holding only Skittles and iced tea, and Zimmerman had no visible injuries to substantiate his claim of being in imminent danger. The case became a battleground for the truth, with the power to affect not just the lives of those involved but the way America viewed race, law, and justice. The trial began in June 2013, and over the course of several weeks, both sides presented their arguments. Trayvon's family and their supporters stood firm, demanding that his death be treated with the gravity it deserved. The courtroom was tense, as both sides built their case. But for many, the verdict was already decided. Trayvon had been the victim of a senseless act, the target of a society that too often viewed young black men as dangerous without cause. The world held its breath as the jury deliberated. On July 13, 2013, the verdict came in. George Zimmerman was found not guilty of all charges. The courtroom erupted in reaction, some in anger, others in disbelief. How could this happen? How could a man take the life of an innocent child and walk free? But Trayvon's story didn't end with that verdict. His death sparked a movement that grew far beyond the courtroom. The case became a focal point for the conversation about race, privilege, and the failures of the justice system. Trayvon's name became synonymous with the fight for justice for all African American lives, and his story catalyzed change that resonated on a national level. Though Trayvon's killer walked free, his memory lived on, as did the calls for systemic change. And as the years passed, the words of Trayvon's mother, Sabrina Fulton, rang louder. Trayvon's life was not in vain. He will forever be the face of our fight for justice. Trayvon Martin's murder was more than just a crime. It was a wake-up call. It forced America to confront the realities of racial bias and the need for greater accountability in the justice system. While the legal system failed to bring the justice Trayvon deserved, his story sparked a revolution in the way the nation views race and policing. Trayvon's life may have been taken too soon, but his death ignited a fire that can't be extinguished. His story lives on, not just in the legal battles that followed but in the hearts of those who continue to fight for equality, for fairness, and for the dignity of every life. Trayvon Martin may not have made it home that night, but his legacy, the legacy of fighting for justice, for change, and for a world where no one is judged by the color of their skin, will never be forgotten. If you believe Trayvon's story deserves to be heard, share this video, like, and subscribe for more true crime cases that demand justice. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Trayvon's death sparked a true change in America? Or is the fight for justice still ongoing? Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more true crime cases that demand to be heard.